What is up, YouTube? It's Black Coffee Sports out here. I'm George, your host, your analyst, your commentator, everything. MVP, if you will. Okay? Today on the show, our first official episode, we're talking about a wide range of topics here. And that's what I want to do on this show, is talk about a wide range each and every episode. I want to keep it fresh, okay? Our 5 topics for today. NBA playoff picture. Who finishes where out in the West? Who's the real contender to Milwaukee out in the East? The Houston Astros. Are we being too hard on them? Are we being too soft on them? What in the world is the MLB commissioner doing? The XFL. The XFL. Can it sustain itself? Will it be better than the AFL? Can it contend with the NFL? Who's the funnest team to watch? The NFL this week came out with a new playoff format projected for their CBA agreement. Will it be agreed upon? Is it going to be a good thing? Is it going to be a bad thing? We'll talk about that. Finally, the NCAA tournament is in full push. Okay? Big marquee matchups this weekend to keep an eye on. We'll talk about those bubble teams, who's battling for position, and which matchups we should pay attention to. But first on the docket, and to me, probably the funnest topic there is of the day, the NBA playoff picture. Out in the West, you have 3 teams, in my opinion, battling for the 8th seed. Now, technically, you have 5, but I don't think we all really expect the Sacramento Kings to finally get their act together suddenly. And I don't think we really expect San Antonio to do anything. They just don't have the players. LaMarcus Aldridge is playing like not LaMarcus Aldridge. That's pretty much just DeMar DeRozan out there on the Spurs, and Greg Popovich knows it, and it's over for that season, for that team. So it's coming down to the Portland Trailblazers, Memphis Grizzlies, and New Orleans Pelicans. One team has a significant advantage right now, obviously the Memphis Grizzlies. But will it stay that way? And my answer to that is no, it won't. Today I looked over all 3 schedules, and something's very clear. The NBA does not like Memphis. Because Memphis' schedule for the final part of the season is tremendously difficult. You could be a fan of Memphis, but at the same time, you got to be a real person, a real clear person on judging their schedules. I'm a big fan of Memphis. I love John Morant. I love Jaren Jackson Jr. I love their acquisition of Justice Winslow. I love Jonas Valanciunas. I like their team. I do not like their schedule. I also think their coach is really underrated as well, a new coach out there. I just don't like that schedule, man. You got to play LA, both LA teams twice. You got to play the other teams you're battling for playoff position with at least 3 times. And there's one thing you do not want to face in the NBA in the second part of your season. Veteran teams battling for position in the playoffs, okay? They play Utah a couple times. They play Houston, I think, one more time. They have a really hard schedule. Memphis does. Portland's and New Orleans, both of them, have significantly easier schedules than Memphis. The only difference is, obviously, Memphis has a 4.5 game advantage on the Pelicans, and I think it's a 3.5 game or something like that for the Trailblazers. Something pretty close to that. Something not going the Trailblazers' way, though, is the fact that Damian Lillard has pulled up a little bit lame and will be out for at least a week. Some people are thinking at least a couple weeks. So that could really put a dent in their playoff run, because we all know if you've been alive and breathing the last 2 weeks, or really the last month, you know that Damian Lillard's been on a whole different level. I mean MVP type level. The numbers he was putting up, the efficiency he was putting up, the absolute carrying he was doing of that organization before the acquisition of Trevor Ariza, it was next level. It was really awesome to watch. So him pulling up lame is going to kind of hurt them a little bit, inevitably. The Pelicans, let's talk about the Pelicans for a second. The Pelicans also, on the opposite end of that, get their star player back in Zion Williamson, who seems unguardable right now. Obviously, he's got to fix the shot up a little bit, be a little bit more consistent. Got to probably lose about 10 pounds so he can stop putting so much torque on his body, because it's just inevitable for him to get another injury with how big he is and how much he jumps and how much he leaps and how high he goes up in the air. He's tremendous to watch, but I want him to be a little bit more healthy. But he just seems unguardable right now. The only team that could guard him was Milwaukee, and it took the MVP and likely Defensive Player of the Year in Giannis Antetokounmpo to guard him, and he still put up 15, 5, and some amount of assists. He still did okay for an NBA rookie. Okay, against one of the best defensive players we've seen in the last 15 years. That said, I still have a few questions about their defense. Their defense still doesn't look all that together. Their defense still seems to have a lot of gaps. Not really knowing how to rotate around. Not really knowing how to really manipulate their way around a defense or around an offense defensively, I should say. So, I have questions about every single team. Portland, Damian Lillard's health. New Orleans, can they play defense? Memphis, can they overcome their tough schedule? New Orleans will come out on top, and it's just strictly because their schedule is significantly easier. I have New Orleans finishing 42-40, finishing as the 8th seed. I have Portland finishing at 41-41, finishing as the 9th seed. And I have Memphis finishing at 40-42, finishing as the 10th seed in the West. Now, obviously, you see there, I don't have a big gap in between them, so it wouldn't surprise me if Memphis finishes 42-40 and then New Orleans finishes 40-42. The only reason I have New Orleans taking a little bit of an advantage is because their schedule is just by far one, and it's really strange to see because I've seen a lot of easy schedules, but their 2-month schedule to end the season is just tremendously easy. All they have to do is fix a little bit of the defensive problems, which if you get on a roll as a team, is really easy to do. To me, defense is all about effort. And as long as they get on a roll as a team, the effort will be there. They have Drew Holiday. They have Zion who can kind of bounce back and forth and can switch off. Lonzo, who we all know is a pretty good defender. Brandon Ingram, who's long but not really laterally fast. If he can be a little bit quicker, maybe he's healthy now, maybe he's going to be a little bit quicker. Who knows? Josh Hart coming off the bench, also a pretty good defender. Derek Favors protecting the rim. They can get it together. Memphis can very easily surprise us too. Memphis has shown the ability. I want to air caution too. Memphis has shown the ability to hang with the tough teams, something New Orleans has not done. Now, New Orleans has won a couple big games. Don't get me wrong, but I need a bigger sample size from them. A couple games is not compared to a whole season like Memphis. Memphis has hung with the better teams, but it seems like a little bit too much for a young team to kind of overcome. I pick Pelicans to finish in the 8th seed, and we'll see if that comes to fruition. The next kind of topic we're going to segue into here is the Houston Astros. The Houston Astros, if you've been in an absolute dead sleep the last 2 months, has been declared one of the biggest cheaters in MLB history. They stole signs by using technology. They has not been proven, but it's been accused that they used buzzers. Yeah, it's a big mess. Houston really messed up. Are we being too hard on them though? My answer to that is absolutely not. There's no room for cheating in sports, and especially in baseball. Now, let's have a little bit of a history lesson on baseball. Okay, cheating has always been in the MLB, and it always will be in the MLB. We went from pine tar on the pitcher's hands to steroids, back to pine tar, back to steroids, and we keep sign stealing. Just the dummies keep getting caught because they keep using technology. We went from signing to second baseman, signing to catchers, a lot of things, and there will continue to be a lot of things. But there's a number one rule. There's like a hidden rule, kind of like how there's some words you shouldn't say as people. There's certain things you shouldn't do. And in baseball, there's something you should never do, and it's use technology to win games. Baseball people hate when people use technology to win games, and I do too. I think it's absolutely asinine that they have not had their World Series title repossessed. It's asinine. Take it for instance. The University of Louisville had strippers for 2013 and got their national title repossessed for having strippers. These guys actually went out and cheated on the field. And they got a $5 million fine, and 2 people lost their job, which, by the way, A.J. Hinch and the general manager were probably the 2 least involved people in this entire process. If you read the reports, their manager and front office manager were probably the two least involved higher level people in this entire scandal. So to me, the fact that they lost their job was a little bit like the wrong way. How is Jose Altuve still the MVP of 2017? How they not lost their World Series title of 2017? Now there's accusations coming out that they also cheated in 2018 and 19, and I believe it. Okay, like you just don't suddenly become a non-cheater after you cheated and won, like and got away with it. Like that's saying that someone went and got away with a murder and are suspected for two more murders, but they just suddenly became a good person. Like no, it doesn't happen like that. Life doesn't work like that. You don't suddenly become a good person after you've not been caught doing a bad thing. Like that's just not how it works, right? So to me, I don't know how their stuff hasn't been repossessed yet. And let's talk about how out of touch Rob Manfred is with their players. He called the World Series trophy a piece of metal. How can you do that? These guys are sacrificing time with their families, with friends, with the social life, with everything. Now, of course, they get paid a ton of money, but the main goal for them is to win that World Series title each and every season. And for you to call it a piece of metal and to treat it with the disrespect that you did, Mr. Manfred is by far the most disrespectful thing you could have done throughout this entire process. Those words you used in your press conference earlier this week, just mind-boggling how out of touch you can be with your players and how poor of choice of words you can use as such an esteemed person. Like like that bothers me, and I'm not even a player. That bothers me that you would call a piece of a trophy, that you would call a trophy a piece of metal. Like that bothers me. I mean, I played sports coming up as a kid. I've never been one to believe in participation trophies. It's always the one trophy at the end of the season. So I guess it's me a little bit harder that you called it a piece of metal. But the fact that you would be that out of touch with your fans is just and your players is just mind-boggling to me. And let's not forget the Champions League came out with a 2-year postseason ban, $200 and something million fine, and multiple restrictions for Manchester City after it got shown that they were doing some shady things. So when we saw that and saw what commissioners and stuff were capable of, and you look at what Rob Manfred did to the Houston Astros, it's just mind-boggling to me that we're in this situation right now. How do you mess something up that easy? Just punish them. Just punish them. It's not that hard. That's all you have to do, right? Like some things in life you just overcomplicate because you're trying to play the line too well. But that's not one thing you play the line with. You're hard on them, and no one's going to fault you for it. Moving on from that, the XFL, it's good. Like, did we all expect it to be this good? I know I did not. Because we had the AFL last year. The AFL last year was just god-awful. I mean, it was just god-awful. You look on TV, there may be 1,000 people in the stands, if that. I mean, I may be giving a little bit too much credit to the AFL. The play was awful. The quarterbacks couldn't throw the ball. The running backs couldn't run the ball. The tackling was kind of fun to watch, but it was also illegal. It caused a lot of injuries. They didn't know the role. And to me, guys, one thing in life that I've learned is to know your role. Whether it's at work, whether it's in school, whether it's in a relationship, whether it's anything, is to know your role and to stay in your lane. The XFL failed back in 2000, 2001 because it didn't do that. Vince McMahon did not know his role in the XFL. He did not realize what the XFL's role was and which lane he should stay in. He tried to do too much, and that's why it failed. Vince McMahon seems a lot more seasoned. And for those of you that don't know, Vince McMahon is probably one of the most genius marketers we've had in our lifetime. If you don't know what I'm talking about, he grew the WWE tremendously fast to an outstanding level of excellence and performance. So he obviously knows what he's doing when it comes to marketing a fairly new thing. And no one's ever done anything quite like the WWE before. The XFL is going to sustain itself for this reason. They know their role. A developmental league a second chance league for people that maybe fell in the NFL or never got to the NFL. A league that gives people options that they really could not get in the NFL. Uh, so the XFL was sustained itself for that weekend. The for that reason, the first weekend in the XFL got 3 times the average viewership than the AFL in their entire season last season. Their attendance at games, their worst attendance at a game, I think was 13,000, which by far just blew out any attendance at the best game at the AFL last season. I mean, it's not even close. How much better the XFL is doing rather than the AFL. And Vince McMahon came out and said this. He expects to lose $350 million in the first season, I believe, or the first couple seasons maybe, of the XFL. He doesn't plan to make a dime for the first 5 seasons. So when you have something like that, and you have that kind of mindset, and you know your role, you have that kind of budget, those resources obviously, and you're also very self-reflectory, very what's the word I'm looking for here? Very self-aware when it comes to your business, knowing what your business can and can't do, knowing the right projection and growth for it, you're going to be just fine. So for that reason, I think the XFL will sustain itself. It's super fun to watch. To me, I watched the first season. I had a ton of fun watching it personally. I didn't get to watch a whole lot this last weekend. This weekend, I will watch a lot more because I really enjoy watching Cardell Jones, PJ Walker, and a couple other those players, Eli Rogers as well. Really fun. If you have not got a chance to check out the XFL, do so, especially if you're a sports fan. It's really fun. The way the production's set up on ESPN and Fox is super interesting as well. It's very new. And I just think it's a whole lot of fun. And personally, I would love to see it sustain itself. It kind of bridges the gap between the NFL and the MLB throughout the winter. NBA kind of does that too, but the NBA comes on so late at night, and then limited games are on nationally. So you don't really get to watch the teams that you want to watch. XFL gets to air all their games. I love it, man. The NFL, the XFL's Papa, if you will, came out this week and said, we're projecting new formats for the CBA, the collective bargaining agreement. We want more games. They're projecting what they want for the format is 3 preseason games, 17 regular season games, up from 16 normally. And they want an extra playoff team. So instead of 6 playoff teams from each conference, there'll be 7 playoff teams with only 1 team getting a bye. I love it. Personally, I love it. And here's why. No one likes the preseason, okay? So anytime you're bringing me a deal that includes less preseason games, I'm going to agree with you. And that's just because no one likes it, okay? I kind of get that the preseason is for your development. You're kind of seeing which people can fit on the last end of your roster. I totally get it. So I'm one for 2 or 3 preseason games. You should be able to determine it by then. If you haven't determined it by 3 preseason games, you need to reevaluate your scouting team and your coaching team. That said, we're up from 17 games is up 1 from 16 games of last season. So I really like that as well. And it's a boost, but not enough of a boost to water down the regular season. So the many people that are kind of opposing this format are the people that say the regular season will now be watered down because of the 1 extra game. Guys, the regular season is not going to be watered down from 1 extra game. It's just not. It's not, okay? 1 extra game, what it's going to do is it's going to bring in more money for the NFL. The players get more money. You'll get more cap space on teams. So you get more star-filled teams. I love it. I love it, okay? And I also love it for the reason that an extra team gets into the playoffs. Playoff games in the NFL are so fun. Playoff games in any major like professional sport are fun. Like the NBA. The NBA, in my opinion, actually needs to restructure their playoffs, but we'll talk about that a different time. But the NFL, the MLB, any major league sport, it's super fun to watch playoffs. So why not have an extra game? Okay, and who is it really going to hurt here to have an extra team in each conference? Who's it really going to hurt? Like nobody. The only people that don't want it are old NFL people that are just resistant to any type of change. Those are the same people that didn't want to make the game safer. So, in my opinion, I love the new format. I can't wait to see how it works out. By the way, if this format was applied to 2019, for instance, the AFC, Baltimore would have been the only team to get a bye. Kansas City would have actually played the new 7th seed, which would have been the Pittsburgh Steelers. And who knows what happens with that kind of defense for the Pittsburgh Steelers? They were playing really well. To me, it's a lot of fun. It adds a lot more of a guess. It keeps it innovative, keeps it changing, because with a lot of these changes, the MLB is also proposing a change to their postseason as well. The NBA wants to propose a change to their postseason as well. So the NFL had to do something. The NFL will always remain the biggest sport in America, but it's always good to have a little bit of change as well. Speaking of change, the NCAA tournament this year ought to be one of the most unpredictable tournaments we've seen in the last 10 seasons. It is completely wide open. Aside from Baylor and Kansas, I don't know who sets themselves apart from the rest of the pack. I mean, you have Baylor, Kansas like 1-2, like clearly 1-2. Then you have some questionable teams that we haven't really seen perform, but they're actually doing well. And Gonzaga, San Diego State, and a couple like Creighton, Dayton. So you have a couple of those types of teams who have performed well, but they haven't really played that high caliber of opponents. You have teams like Duke, Louisville, Kentucky. Who else we got? Those three. Florida State in there as well. Auburn in there as well, although Auburn's really starting to expose themselves. LSU kind of in there as well, where they're performing well, but they've also had a couple like, what are you doing, dude, type games. Like what are you doing losing to Georgia Tech, Louisville? What are you doing losing, okay, a fly right here, losing to Clemson, Louisville? What are you doing losing to Evansville, Kentucky? What are you doing almost losing to Syracuse, Florida State? What are you doing, Auburn, losing to Georgia? What are you doing, LSU, losing half the games you have? Like, Oregon, what are you doing losing out there in one of the easiest conferences there is? Michigan, what are you doing losing to teams when you're that good? Memphis, what happened to you? So the NCAA is wide open this year, in my opinion. I love it. I absolutely love it. And if you pay attention to this weekend's matchups, there's a lot of marquee matchups. Like, for instance, Penn State at Indiana is a really good game. Penn State battling for a 3 and 4 seed. Indiana battling to get into the tournament. Cincinnati, same thing, going up against Wichita State, battling to get into the tournament. Memphis battling to get into the tournament as well. Xavier's also got a good matchup. Creighton versus Butler, a top 20 matchup, which is also pivotal for that kind of. They're both in that spot to where we're talking about they're good, but who have they really played that's also good? And that's my biggest fault when it comes to those West Coast teams, like Gonzaga, Oregon, Arizona. They're good, but who in the world have they played? Gonzaga's going to have the toughest matchup tomorrow, and it's BYU. Like, if your toughest matchup is BYU, go make a tougher schedule. That's one of the most irritating things to me. This happens every single year, especially with Gonzaga. It started happening with Wichita State, but we kind of backed off of it because Wichita State's not as good. But Gonzaga every single year finishes the top 3 in the national rankings, but can't make it past the Elite 8. They can't make it past the Elite 8 because they don't play anybody. And to me, I wish strength of schedule was taken more into account than it is in the NCAA tournament rankings. But that's kind of another conversation for a different day as well. This episode was more about kind of getting into some things, not really diving into too much. I want to kind of keep it briefer. Most episodes will be around 30 minutes. This will be around 25 to 26 minutes. So I want to kind of keep it a little bit briefer. So in recap, what we talked about today, NBA, I believe Pelicans finish out West in the 8th seed, and Memphis and Portland trail just behind. But I really would not be surprised if Memphis finishes because they can hang with the better teams as well. And out East, I think actually the Philadelphia 76ers and the Boston Celtics are the biggest threat to Milwaukee because they have the people that can guard that team. It's just a matter if they can get out of their own way. That said, I still think Milwaukee takes it head and shoulders above everybody else and finishes in the NBA Finals. And actually, I pick Milwaukee to be the NBA champions. And out in the XFL, we project that it's going to sustain itself. It's super fun to watch. It has really good ratings, really good return. There's actually people showing up to games. Actually, fandom starting to take place. A real league starting to show up in XFL. The Houston Astros, I don't believe are being hard enough on them. Take away the medal. Take away the championship. Take away Jose Altuve's MVP. Give it to Aaron Judge from 2017. And they're saying they didn't cheat 2018 and 19. You don't suddenly become a good person after you got away with being bad. Houston Astros definitely need to be repossessed of all their winnings. And it blows my mind how out of touch Rob Manfred is with his players and his league. The NFL playoff projection, new format for the CBA to agree upon this week. They'll vote on it later on this week or early next week. Adding an extra regular season game, adding an extra postseason team. I love it myself. And the NCAA, it's wide open this year. Marquee matchups this weekend. Let me know which games you're going to be tuning into. If you like watching the XFL as well, just as much as I do. Let me know if you like the NFL playoff format or if you would do it different. Are you more critical of Rob Manfred's handling of Houston, or are you saying maybe the players are being a little bit too hard on the other players? And then finally, who's your playoff teams out in the West and East? Let me know. Thank you guys for tuning in. This has been episode 1 of Black Coffee Sports. I can't wait to do more with you guys. We'll also be on podcast here soon. If you haven't already subscribed to the YouTube, do all that fun YouTube stuff with turning the bell on. Share this video out with your friends on your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, everything. I appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been George Herbig. This has been Black Coffee Sports Talk, and I've had a lot of fun with you.